Others work in the printing shop, again doing work for the government, mainly printing forms and circulars for the prison service itself, with its endless hunger for red tape. Traditional jail jobs, like sewing mailbags, are just to keep prisoners occupied. Now at least some of the work provides an interest in itself. Some prisoners even learn a skilled trade. But for most, probably, the main advantage of work is to relieve the boredom of serving a long sentence. You're just leaving prison, having served what you've done of a 5-year sentence. What has prison done to you?
It's made me more subdued in many respects because of what I've had to do to myself in order to cope with the sentence. First of all, it's a pretty big shock to you, and you really feel terrible. You know, you can't put it in words. But then you go through a sort of transition period where you decide to yourself, well, I've got to come to terms with it. So you've got to shut off your mind from outside in order to cope with it. Had I been released from prison a year ago, I would have been far more equipped to cope with the problems which arise outside than I am now.
Why?
Because I've had to shut off more. I've gone through the transition period completely, and now I've had to shut my mind off completely from outside. I don't even think about outside for sometimes 2 or 3 weeks on end, you know.
How has a long sentence prepared you for going out into the world? What's it done to you inside?
I've had a training in safe breaking, I've had a training in hijacking, by talking to almost other criminals. If I so wanted to, touch wood, I never want to. I don't want to at the moment anyway. But quite frankly, every type of crime which you could almost think of, I've been told in detail by inmates how to do it. Not because I want to do it, but it's the sort of conversation that goes on in prison.
The fact that you are in prison among a lot of other criminals, is this something that's bound to stay with you afterwards? That it's bound to lead you towards living in a criminal community?
Before I came in prison. Because now I've seen the type of person who is a criminal, and they're not such bad characters after all.
When people are about to be released, they're sometimes allowed out on home leave,
yes,
in order to get adjusted. Have you been out?
I have been out for a weekend, yes.
How did you find that?
Well, I was completely bewildered, first of all. It was everything, you know, people open doors for you, and it's just, you know, it's just too much. It was just too much for me. I was completely overcome by it.
And what did you feel when you came back into prison?
Well, by the time I came back into prison, I was out for a weekend, and I'd just began to sort of accept that I had been released. I went through the exact same mental anxieties which I went through when I first came into prison. And this proved to me one thing, that I didn't want to take the second one. And
have you refused another?
I have refused the second one, yes. The minute you come into prison, stand over there, it'll hit you again, you know. Strip off, you're strip searched, and you're just completely stripped of your dignity again, you know. You may see a man walking around a prison, you say, okay, fair enough, he looks happy enough, but you don't really know what's going on inside his mind. That man is stripped of his dignity, and he has the greatest driving power in human nature is a desire to feel important, and you have no feeling of importance in prison. And you also, you know, the two things which motivate man, you cannot do in prison. You cannot feel important, and you have no sex urge. Well, at least it's cut away. If you're heterosexual, it's taken away from you anyway.
What have you done about your sex urge? What has happened inside
I've had to more or less cut myself off from sex. I just don't think about it, you know. It's something which I'm going to have to tackle when I get out. I could have, if I wanted to, had homosexual encounters, but it doesn't particularly interest me personally.
Is there a lot of homosexuality in prison?
Sexuality in prison, but it isn't. I wouldn't say it worries anybody. People are pretty philosophical these days, providing people are not screaming, raving queens. Nobody really cares. I mean, two fellas like each other, people leave them alone, you know. I think there are more or less 3 groups of men coming to this job. You have about 20% of prison officers who are what I could almost call megalomaniacs. Their driving force is the power can dominate people, they're completely happy. In fact, they probably suffer from the same mental deficiencies of what many inmates suffer from. Then you have about 20% of officers who are extreme objective humanists who try genuinely to help you and do help you, and you can go across to them with a problem and they help you, and they're very good people. And you have about 60% of prison officers who are just ordinary people. You may just like a bus conductor maybe, he's in the job to get his money, he's not interested in what the job entails, and the easier the job can be made for him, the better he likes it.
The majority of prisoners are cooperative. It's only a very small percentage.